Hey, and welcome everyone to the Community Talks Part 5. This is the series of webinars on community building that is helping you to figure out how to build a community, what goes into it, what to avoid, and every other possible aspect. And for me as well, because I have a Flamingo tribe that is my community that named itself as well. It's not centralized. I'm possibly going to be centralizing it sometime in the future, but I'm clueless how to do it. So I invite a bunch of community founders from other areas to share their expertise with us and me. Today I am joined by John Espirian. He is a founder of Espresso Plus community. And as some of you just heard, he's been on LinkedIn since 2017-18. He's been building his presence for a while. He has a raving fan club of people that love him for the relentless helpful nerd that he is. John, welcome. How are you today? Me asking that for the first time.
Oh my God. Kind introduction. And yeah, I'm raring to go and to talk about LinkedIn and communities. Let's get into it.
Perfect. Well, first question, tell us about your community, what it is, who is it for, how big is it, and why did you start it?
Okay, so it's a community for small business owners and solopreneurs primarily. We have a few corporate members, but mostly people who are working for themselves, usually from home, and who need a little bit of ongoing learning and support and accountability so that they can promote themselves online in an ethical way. My specialism is LinkedIn, so that's what I help people with most within the community. But we talk about all sorts of stuff, from content writing to personal branding to just online visibility, SEO, all sorts of anything that relates to finding your ideal clients and promoting yourselves online is in scope for Espresso Plus. And it's been going for just over a year. And at the moment, we have just over 230 members spread all over the world. Probably about half of them are in the UK. The rest of them are all over the map.
Sweet. And what made you want to start a community? I also know you have a specific condition on the size of it.
Yeah, that's right. So it was a bit of an organic thing. I started an email list in 2016. And in the last few years, I was noticing that I was having lots of conversations, useful conversations with the members of that email list. But I was the only person who was seeing all the conversations. You know, if you reply to an email, you don't see what other things are going on. And I thought it's about time that we should have a place where people can see each other's discussions. And that meant starting a group. I did a bit of research. A lot of people at the time said, you know, you should start a Facebook group, but I really can't stand Facebook, I'm afraid. And since a lot of my discussions are about LinkedIn, it made sense to try a LinkedIn group, which I'd never really done before. Everyone said LinkedIn groups are dead, they're boring, they're rubbish, they're spammy, don't bother. But I thought, well, I've never tried one. And so I'm all about experimenting. So I created one, and within sort of 2 months, it had grown to more than 600 members and was really, really busy. And at that point, I was still doing copywriting work. That's what I've been doing for the last decade. But it was so busy that I thought, well, I either have to get rid of this now because it's just a distraction from my paid work, or I need to monetize it because that could become my main business. So that's what I did. And in January 2022, I decided to make it, a gated community so that you've got to pay to be part of it. And I added other elements like a video library and a podcast and some other things. And that's what we've been doing for the past year. And now we have, as I say, more than 230 members. And it is actually my full-time occupation to run that community. And so much so that I've stopped doing professional copywriting because I'm too busy running the membership.
You stopped other activities. I thought you were still doing some kind of freelance work on the side.
Yeah, I will do things like LinkedIn consultancy. So if you want to book one-to-one time with me, or if you want LinkedIn training, and I run a LinkedIn training course as well. So those things are still going on in the background, but the main day-to-day focus is on serving those 230 people with daily discussions and video content and audio content and all that good stuff.
That is a dedication that is rare, I think, because a lot of people are going for quantity of members quite often. And
Yeah,
even if they do focus on quality, they get external help. So they're not willing to give up their other commitments.
yeah, yeah.
And community is just one part of it. So kudos to you for that. We're going to dive deeper into how you manage all of it now. I actually will be curious
Mhm.
to hear how you used to manage it as well when you had other work. And for those who are tuning in today, we're going to be talking all about the managing and organization of your community, because it's a lot. You can get a lot of people to sign up, but then you have the even bigger challenge of keeping everything together. All right. Well, the first question I have for you, what goes into maintaining a community? What aspects are there?
Well, I think that the biggest issue that I had with the other communities I was part of historically is that there was a kind of cult of personality where you get attracted to join a community, but then the person running the community isn't there day to day to answer your questions or give you the support. So it's like almost like you're attracted by a celebrity, but then once you're inside, you're handed off to someone who's 5 levels down who doesn't really know as much, and that wasn't the reason you joined. So I wanted to make sure that whatever I did was small enough that I could run it myself, and so that's what I'm doing. And what goes into maintaining, it's starting interesting discussions within the community and trying to get people's opinions on those things, but also to give people somewhere they can feel psychologically safe so they can try things out for themselves. So what we've got is a lot of people who would say, I'm never going to do video, for example, or I'm never going to do audio, or I'm never even going to put a photo of myself out there. They feel empowered to try these things because they're in a space where other people are also learning and supporting each other. So I try to encourage that as much as possible. So that's done through our discussion group, but it's also done through one-to-one conversations in the DMs with the members. So that takes up a lot of time. So that's one of the things I do, and that's just a daily process. Another thing is running the video library. So whenever I create some premium content for the community, so for example, let's say I'll do a roundup of what's new on LinkedIn once a month. That's what I do. That takes a while for me to put together. Then I have to add the captions and generate the transcripts and stuff, and add this to my video library and then share it within the group and so forth. So there's some technical overhead in terms of creating the content and sharing it and making it accessible for people. And then, I mean, those are the main things I would say. Yeah, and I'm just focused on the needs of members. So listening out for pain points. Like, for example, when I started the community, there wasn't a podcast, but people started asking questions like, I'd like to listen to this on the go, and I don't need to see your face to do it. And that led to creating a podcast. So I'm trying to develop things to serve the people in the community instead of just saying, this is it, this is all you're going to get. You like it or you don't. Actually, what do you want? And then try and develop things based on that. So there's innovations. And as I was saying to you before we went live, I started an online community, but we had our first in-person meetup last week. So that
Congrats
was
on that,
never
by the way.
part of the plan. But if you want to really make a community, you got to go and shake some hands and actually meet people. So all of these things, I'm just staying aware for what people really want. So all of it takes up a lot of my time, and therefore I'm in the community, for several hours each day to make that happen. And at the moment, I'm not actually outsourcing any of it. So I'm doing the whole thing, all of the admin, all of the graphics, all of the video creation, just all of the marketing, everything is me.
That's what I was gonna ask you next. If you are doing all of it yourself or you're getting help and you're doing everything yourself.
Right now I am. Now
Okay.
it may come the point where if I want to grow this or make it easier for myself, then maybe I outsource some of it. I've been traditionally a little bit against that because my previous experiments with trying to outsource things haven't gone very well. And because I'm keeping it small, I kind of know that there is enough that I can do it myself. But ultimately, if you want to take a holiday or you know, if you fall ill, if the whole operation stops because one person's not available, I know that's not very good business sense. So there may come a time where I just try and devolve a little bit of power. And actually, that's one of the key points about community that I've been learning about recently, is that real community happens when the members start talking to each other independently and start saying, hey, I'd like to do this within the community. Is that okay? And you just go, yeah, you go and do it. You know, you have a mandate to go and create those things. So we've had a little bit of that. Like, for example, a couple of our members said, can we start a book club? I said, yeah, of course. Why not? Go for it. Do I need to do anything? Not really. So knock yourself out. So it's nice to see these organic things that were never planned come out of community. It's one of the values of community. You never quite know what's going to happen, but people are getting to know each other. People are starting to work with each other, which is lovely. It's one of the great benefits of having a community, is that kind of cooperation and collaboration.
That's awesome, because that kind of falls into one of the stages of community growth. I've also been reading up on the whole theory of community, and to my knowledge, there are 4 stages, and the first one is the build stage, when you are taking care of everything yourself, 100%. And then there is a growth stage, I believe, when around 30% of all the community activities are being taken over by your members. So I think you're tapping into it now, people asking for stuff, people having conversations, the book club idea. Then there's going to be a scale phase if you ever want to tap into that. And that's when it flips the other way around. 70% is done by the community and you are managing just the 30. And the last one is the most beautiful one, that I think a certain size of a community reaches eventually, and that is the cross-pollination, when it just starts spreading on its own. I think Pretty Little Marketer is a good example of it, but also any big brand communities. I think Monzo Bank and Thursday, possibly, they have that, because they have those subreddits or sub Facebook groups that are created by their fans. So that's great. Congrats also on the activity in the community, because I know just how hard it is to keep with all the conversations. I don't have my community centralized, and I am having difficulties keeping up with my DMs. So yeah. I'm already getting help with it.
Yeah, that centralization point is an interesting one, and it's something I didn't really think about too much, because I thought, well, we'll just have chats on LinkedIn and that'll be it. But then when you start adding things like a library of video content and a podcast, and then there's a mailing list as well, and then there's a payment gateway, what happens is that things slowly organically grow, and you just add another system to the pile, and then another system and another system, and before you know it, there's a bit of fragmentation. You know, there's things in lots of places that you have to keep in mind. I suppose one thing that if I were advising someone who was starting a community today, is I would do the research to try and find something that is going to be able to attend all of the needs that you think you're likely to have, or most of them at least, so that you just have one system to operate. And that probably would be an easier way to go forward.
Is that how it is for you now, or is it very fragmented?
It's still quite fragmented, but I have talked to the community about, you know, should we move to a kind of all-in-one system, which is away from LinkedIn? And actually, most people don't want that, because a lot of the people who are in my community are heavy users of LinkedIn. And in fact, about 30% of our members are actually LinkedIn specialists, in which case they're happy to stay there. And because LinkedIn doesn't have an all-in-one solution, if LinkedIn is part of the solution I'm creating, it kind of doesn't matter if I move all of the other stuff away. So it's fragmented at the moment, but it works from the user's point of view. And because the community is small, it works from my point of view as well. The point you said about, you know, when you eventually have this kind of takeoff where it grows organically of its own accord, I can see some value in that, but also that there's a kind of magic in having a small space, because people really get to know each other and really form proper bonds with each other. I think if this operation that I was running were like 10,000 people, it wouldn't have the same vibe. It might still be a good thing, but it wouldn't be the same thing at all.
I think then if you wanted to keep the same quality of conversations and curation, you will have to clone yourself at least 20 times.
Yeah, you definitely would need a community of like a council or community managers, and that's the bad experience that I've had in the past. The community manager is never quite as good as the person who drew you into the community in the first place, and I never want to let that bit go, really.
Well, I've seen people rise from the community member ranks to be community managers. For example, Taslim, he just started his LinkedIn's Creators Club, and two of the members are the community managers. So they started like that, and they also rose up, and now they know all the ins and outs and helping with the community management. But of course, I think it also depends on the type of community, type of founder, type of goals you want to have, and the vibe. Because again, 10,000, even with the community managers, it's different than 230 with just one person.
Yep.
Definitely. It's like going to a different size party, right? It's one thing when you go to a restaurant party, it's more smaller, intimate. And then you go to a nightclub that is the most popular one in the UK, and it's just super crowded.
Yep.
Then the next question I have for you is, how do you combine it with your current work that I guess is not as much as anymore as it used to be before? And how did you combine it before? Because you were doing some freelance work on the side.
Yes, I was. So while we were still in the free period of the group, and in the early stages of the paid group as well, I was still doing copywriting as my main work. And that was a massive challenge in terms of time, because I always wanted to do things with quality, but there was obviously too much, which is why the free community lasted only about 4 months. That's not long at all. I think some people run, certainly on Facebook, they run free communities for years, sometimes before they monetize. This was it's an emergency because I've just run out of time. So that there's nothing I can do other than to monetize or to kill it. So thankfully that period of pain didn't last very long. But then it became clear after I monetized that, it still would be too much for me to run two separate businesses effectively. So I've removed the copywriting, and I was never really massively passionate about the copywriting, because often I was working for large corporations and I was under non-disclosure agreements, and it was all a little bit impersonal. Whereas now, the names of my clients are on my wall, and I know them personally, and I've met many of them, and I, know the names of their dogs. It's a different dynamic altogether. But I do still do the LinkedIn training and LinkedIn consultancy, but that's a very small part of the whole operation. It's probably maybe 10% or so. Everything else is focused on running the community, and that's the way I can continue to operate without breaking down.
If it meets your goals and the goals of the community, there is nothing wrong with it. Can you tell us more about the wall behind you, actually?
Yeah, so I mean, I just did something, that I like to stay on brand. So I've got my blue, green, and orange colors, and I just started, when people joined, I started making these post-it notes with people's names, and I put them on the wall. And I've started putting little crosses next to each person's name if I've met them in real life. So my goal is to try and put crosses on everyone's name. It's just a good reminder that, you matter to me. You're on my wall, the wall of fame, whatever. And it's, they're real people. And I love having, one of the big problems in business we often hear is that businesses don't talk to their customers enough. They just make assumptions about what people probably want without actually going out and meeting customers.
That's the biggest
I spend all of my day.
Yeah.
So I spent my whole day speaking to my clients. They're the only people I really speak to be honest. So I know if they're struggling with something, or if they want something to change, there's no bureaucracy. They can just ask me, and I can go, well, that's a good idea. Let's do that. So it's a nice feeling. So that's the wall.
All right. Well, that is gonna be hard for me to do that with all my followers, because I don't know everyone personally, and that's something that, again, bigger communities lose touch, whether you like it or not, because the size just comes with more responsibilities, more problems as well, because the bigger communities have bigger problems and all kinds of different problems. Cyber attacks, the troll management, because some people can harass other members and you have to deal with it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, I've got this community of what, 230 members, but it took me probably 5 years of building my personal brand before I had enough trust, enough social capital that people wanted to opt in. And what happens now is that because people have been seeing my content for a long time, they feel as though they know me, even if we've never met, and they kind of self-select. They see the kind of person I am, and they attract themselves into the community, and that means that we tend to have nice people in the community. We don't have really kind of harsh trolls or people with really, really strong opinions that try and dominate others. It's not my style. So the people who like my style aren't going to be those people. So it's kind of self-reinforcing that we end up having a community of nice people.
Yeah.
The stronger your personal brand is, the more likely you are, I think, to invite the people who you like in there.
Yeah, and that is a risk that you need to be at least aware of when you grow. Obviously, not every community is going to end up like that, hopefully. So to sum it up, the things that you cover in management side of things, you need to create a lot of content. You need to curate the conversations. You need to have one-on-one conversations with people as well, and try to evolve and change the community based on their requests. And the whole admin side of things, I can only imagine how much headache that can be.
Yeah, well, it's one of the reasons why I'm now considering changing my monthly plan, because I never got into this to process credit cards. It's the most boring thing in the world, and so when payments fail, it's like it's a task that you need to be on top of, but it's not fun. And so I'd much rather people join for a year, but maybe I'll move to a yearly and quarterly option, because monthly membership with payment failures and things like that, they're no fun. Any community manager will probably tell you the same, I imagine.
So how do you keep it all organized? Do you have a system for it, or do you just YOLO it like many people do?
I keep a separate spreadsheet of where all my members are based and who they are and what their LinkedIn profiles are. But my payment gateway just kind of logs everything else. So that's something I've invested in. It's called Thrivecart. You might have heard of it, but there's probably loads of payment gateways out there. So that lets you sign up and manage your monthly payments or yearly payments. So that side of things is taken care of, but they can't magically put money into people's accounts and so forth. So, payments fail and that kind of thing. But we've got other set piece stuff going on, so that also takes time. So for example, like we do, I mentioned the LinkedIn roundup, but we do there's like a couple of live Q&As each month, so we've got to kind of do a little bit of prep for that and announce schedules and then process that content afterwards. So it's really a lot of effort, and I'm sure some of it could be streamlined, but I'm fairly technically minded. So I'm pretty good at optimizing my stuff on the technical side of things anyway, but even so, it all takes time.
Just how much time does it take, given how many tasks you're taking care of by yourself?
Yeah, I don't put a firm timer on it, because I tend to snack on LinkedIn through the day. So I might wake up first thing and see some DMs and I'll answer them. But also just before I go to bed, there might still be questions coming in. So it's broken up during the day, but it's usually at least a few hours per day of focusing purely on the community and the admin stuff. So like I say, it really is a full-time job, because that'll be every day that's going on.
Literally every day on the weekends.
Literally every day. Yeah, because like my weekend might be someone else's Monday in Australia. So yeah, it's ongoing all the time, and people are understanding. Sometimes you get ill, sometimes you want to take a little bit of time off, but generally, one of the things I think people like when you're really, really responsive, it's one of the key signals of a company that's seen well on social media, is even if they don't give you a great answer, if they can respond to you within a few minutes, at least you feel heard. And I don't like leaving people unattended for a long period of time. So I try to be as responsive as I can.
Yeah, that's understandable. I try to do that with my DMs as well, failing but trying is the key word there. So with all of that, I'm sure that you've made some mistakes along the way. Having fragmented system is already a headache to manage to a degree. Having to do it all yourself as well, and also no days off as a result. What mistakes have you made along the way? At the start, now, tell us.
Well, I suppose in hindsight, I didn't realize how popular the founder member offer would be. So when I set up, I announced that the first 100 people to sign up would get a really, really good preferential rate on their membership. And those 100 slots went in the first day. So that I was amazed by that. But in hindsight, I probably could have either made fewer founder member spots. I think 50 would have been smarter, or I could have charged a higher rate. And pricing was a big thing in my mind because I didn't know, having never run a paid community before, I didn't know what was appropriate. I've since seen a recent report saying I think the average community is charging people something like 37 or 39 pounds, which is what, 45 euros per month. I didn't really know that at the time, so I launched at a much lower price. And the market research that I'd done with the people I knew before then, I was saying, how much would you pay for something like this? And some people were saying, I'd pay £5 a month, and other people were saying I'd pay £100 a month. And I didn't know which of those was. I thought, well, both of them are probably wrong, and the answer is somewhere in between. But I didn't know for certain. So maybe charging more from the beginning would have meant that I was more financially comfortable now. But what I have done is I have increased my prices for newer members. I haven't passed those price increases on for existing members because I want to kind of reward their loyalty. But getting the pricing thing right is quite important, because otherwise you might end up working way too many hours for very little financial return. So that's one thing. I think another thing was when I set up my Q&As, so set piece sessions within the community, I would always book an hour of time. An hour for a Q&A, an hour for a content presentation, whatever it was.
That's
and
2 hours without breaks.
Well, it would always be a solid hour at a time. It just felt natural that I would do that. But actually, what people then started to tell me, they didn't tell me straight away, but after a while, they said, well, I can't spare an hour in my day. I'm busy with my work, but I can spare half an hour. And so what we started to do is I cut down the sessions to half an hour. We'd start the session, more people would join because of that, because it's shorter. And then we get to the end of half an hour and people would want to keep talking. So actually, it might go to 45 minutes or something. But if you set it up as 45 minutes or an hour, they would say, oh, that's too long. So that's an interesting learning, that if you give people something shorter and snackable and it's good, then they can open up and stay a bit longer. So that was another thing that I didn't realize at the beginning. I should just make things shorter.
I have this kind of paradigm with my networking calls. I have had them set up as half an hour for entire last year, and almost every call will go overtime, quite often all the way to an hour. Now I decreased it to 15 minutes. And I don't think I've had a single call that actually lasted 15 minutes either. They all go overtime.
Yeah. And I suppose if I were to give you one more thing, I probably should have investigated something like an affiliate deal sooner. I'm looking at this now. So my plan is to reward my yearly members by letting them recommend the community to other new yearly members and get a financial bonus for doing that. But maybe if I'd done that sooner, maybe we could have grown to 300 much more quickly. And that would have been a smarter financial decision. But again, I didn't know how popular it was going to be, so I didn't set up with an affiliate deal. I probably would in hindsight now.
And again, if you were to do it, your community will grow faster. So you will have certain growth challenges faster as well. So probably even more on your plate.
Yes, but one of the rules that I set up for myself is that the community would be limited to 300 members, as you alluded to earlier. And I'm interested to see if that ever happens, there will be a kind of FOMO aspect to being in the community and not wanting to lose your place because someone else might take it. We haven't reached that point yet, but if we do, I think that will be an interesting social experiment.
So what will happen once there is 300 members, but there are people that still want to join?
Well, I would put them on a waiting list and say someone has to leave before you can join, and then maybe someone would be able to sell their space. I don't know. I haven't really looked into that yet because we're not, we're still 70 members away from it happening, but it could be possible.
All right. Well, I'm sure that you'll reach it in no time
Well, I
with
hope so.
affiliate
Thank
program. Especially, I think affiliate programs are really nice because it's a nice way to spread the word of your brand, support it, and also support the members themselves. I've been involved in a few affiliate programs myself. They work pretty nicely. What other challenges have you had? Like, do you have any admin issues that you've encountered? Because the simple thing for me of setting up my email domain was the biggest headache of my life.
Okay, well, yeah, the tech side of things, it hasn't been so much of a challenge because I've been using these separate systems, each of which I know fairly well. That side of things hasn't been a big challenge. I suppose if I were to try and bring in a community manager and try to explain it all to them, it would take a while to convey. But actually, each thing I choose has worked fairly well. I mean, probably the flakiest, the least reliable system out of everything I use is probably LinkedIn, because we see LinkedIn does weird things, or sometimes it's down, and sometimes, you can't react to a post. But hey, what can we do? You can't really change that core platform. And especially when it's my business to teach people how it works, there's nothing I can do about that. So yeah, that technical admin is it's a time suck, but it's not actually difficult to do.
Right. And when in terms of content creation, you said that your community has evolved and changed quite a bit. There are some things that you're not expecting that will appear. How did you manage that? Was there any difficulties there, or is everyone super patient?
That hasn't been too hard either, because I'm just trying to be as transparent as I can with members. So if a member says, are you going to provide transcripts for all the videos? Then I would say, honestly, I hadn't planned to do that. I now need to go and research how to do it. Or I found a solution and I've implemented it. Or I hadn't planned to run a podcast. I don't know what podcast platform to use. And someone makes a suggestion and then we try it and then it works and it's fine. So I just try to be transparent with people. And if someone comes up with a good idea as well, I like to credit them within the community, because that makes people feel more valued. And we've got something going on. I was speaking to you before we started recording about having, like your spreadsheet where you put all of your details in, having something like that in Google Sheets, so that I can list everyone's keywords, like, this person is good at social media management, this person is a logo designer, so that we have a searchable database of skills that's just for members. That was someone's idea at last week's meetup, actually. And that's something we're going to try and implement very, very soon. So I just try and be transparent that not all the good ideas are going to come from me. And sometimes it might be a bit difficult to set it up, but I will try my best to listen to people's requests.
Love that, because you can't do it all by yourself. And
No.
I think one of the aspects of community that a lot of people forget about, just because there is so much monetize this, monetize that going on, is that you feed into the community and they feed into you. So the whole support system that you create, or feedback loop, whatever you want to call it. So you help your community, yes, but the community also helps itself and you at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And you've just reminded me that one of the things I'm quite big about is that we shouldn't really be trying to sell stuff to each other. I don't like groups or communities, whatever you want to call them, where people just join them so that they can try and sell their stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
It should be about just learning about each other's questions and getting to know people and sharing helpful content, and that's it. So we're not a kind of community that is sharing business cards and just desperately trying to get deals and spam our latest blog posts so that we can get more traffic. And, we don't do any of those things. And I don't try and sell my other services into the community. Even so much as, for example, I've got a book, so Content DNA. I've just made the digital copy available to all members for free. So I'm not selling the book. You can have it if you're a member, and you can go and search it and all those things. So I could say everyone should buy the book. It's £10 each. I'd rather just help people a bit more.
Yeah, that makes sense. They're already part of the community.
Yeah, I
So
don't need to sell to them.
yeah. Well, you mentioned the affiliate program, you mentioned
Yeah.
the list, the directory, and you also mentioned
Mhm.
the pricing challenge that you had at the beginning.
Yeah.
What else would you do differently?
I probably would have started a free group sooner,
Mhm.
because I think, like I said, I was already sort of 5 years in before I did, and I probably could have started it maybe a year sooner than that. And if I had, then I probably would have monetized a year sooner, and maybe we'd be in a different conversation now. But so I would have started sooner. I think it was a bit of lack of self-confidence that could this thing work, because I did think about it before. And maybe I probably would have looked into a platform such as Circle or Heartbeat before, and then try and centralize the discussion. But as I said, because so much of it is about LinkedIn, it kind of makes sense that the discussion bit happens on LinkedIn.
Circle is a really good platform if you
It
ever
is.
consider.
I've used it. I've used it with a colleague's own community that he's developing, and it is definitely a good platform. Maybe in hindsight, I would have gone to that, but I think maybe the switching cost of doing it now might be a bit,
Yeah.
like people know what they're doing now, so I don't need to mess them around. They can keep doing whatever.
Again, if it works, right? And your close community, it's a LinkedIn group, right?
The discussion spaces for LinkedIn,
Yeah.
but just to go through I'll give you the platforms we use, because none of this
Yes,
is a
please.
secret. So the emails go through a discussion list on MailChimp, which is paid. The video library is hosted on Vimeo Pro, which is paid. So I'm paying for them. The podcast goes through a platform called Hello Audio, which I'd never heard before, and one of the members suggested it. It's amazing, and it's so cheap. You could just drag and drop your files, and it just goes live to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and it's brilliant. One of the best platforms I've ever used. So that's Hello Audio. We have a map of where all the members are based. So that's using a free tool called Padlet. So it's free to create 3 maps on that. You can just
Okay.
add pointers, and it's color coded. It's wonderful. So I use that. The discussion group is free, and that's on LinkedIn. And then the payment gateway is on Thrivecart. And I got a special deal where I could pay for it for life. I think I spent about 550, £600, but I can use it forever. So instead of the monthly payment model that they have. So I'm
Hmm.
using lots of different systems, but they're all fairly good and fairly reliable.
Okay.
And that's what I'm using to run the community.
Well, as a tech marketer in my previous job, can say that you can make them work pretty well together. I think centralized communities are great, but there are also other ways of
Mm.
making the different systems work. Do you, by any chance, use Zapier to connect any of
I
them?
know about Zapier integrations. I haven't really used that with anything in my community yet, but I
Hmm.
have investigated them in the past, and I probably at some point need to speak to an automation expert and see what
Hmm.
back of house things I could do to speed things up a little bit.
Yeah,
But as I say, probably the main hassle has been things like payment failures, and that's because credit cards expire and things like that. And it's very hard to automate your way out of that if someone doesn't have money in their account or their card is out of date.
true, true.
You can't fix that with a magic wand.
I wish that was possible, right? If you want to talk to an automation specialist, I have a guy so I can recommend. You can just drop me a DM after this. We have 2 questions
Okay.
from the audience. Number 1 is from Matt. How much time are you spending managing your community right now versus how much do you take initially?
Um, yeah, I'm spending most of my working day on it. It's my main gig, so it's at least 3 or 4 hours across a whole day. It would be at least that per day, I would say. And when I was doing it initially, I mean, everything was new. Like taking payments was new, managing discussions was relatively new, creating a private video library was new. So I was probably spending a lot more time then, but that's because I was learning as I went. So you've got to throw yourself in if you're going to do these things properly.
Do you have any estimate on hours? Like, did it take you from dusk till dawn, or
Well,
no?
when I first starting out with it, I think, you know, it's easily eight hours or 10 hours in a day. But then I was trying to grow a brand new business, and of course, if you know, if you're not going to throw yourself into it, what if everyone leaves after a month? Your business is dead, aren't? So you've got to put in a lot of time and effort. It's less now because I kind of know what I'm doing and people know what to expect from me, and it's easier. But also, if I just took up my foot off the gas and say, well, I've got 230 people paying me per month, I can just take it easy.
Mm.
That risks my reputation, doesn't it? So my whole thing is built on this idea of being relentlessly helpful.
Mm.
It's not sometimes helpful, you know. So I've got to try and make the effort to make sure that these people are getting value for money.
Yeah, and I think you need to keep that thing in mind at all times, because there's not like a digital product when you don't really directly speak to the users or customers. Here you actually are in the presence of your customer base every single day. And if all of a sudden you are present less, it is very noticeable. Another question we have is from Mark. What is the best thing about having a community to work with rather than a client based to work with?
It's just more personal interaction with a community. You know, like I said, you get to know people's names, faces, you know, the names of their dogs. It's different from working for larger clients who you might not be in touch with very often, and you don't get that personal relationship with them. And having that personal relationship with people just means as well that in terms of social media, you're kind of protected from the algorithms. Like if people have already opted into your space, they know you, they trust you, they're paying you. It doesn't matter what the algorithms are doing, those people are still going to be trusting you and interacting with you. So it's a good way of protecting yourself, actually. So that the best thing is, yeah, just helping nice individuals just move their businesses forward. And I'm all about doing it the ethical way as well. So we don't do the whole engagement pods or, you know, the latest, you know, black hat hacks to try and cheat.
Yeah.
And you know, and we don't recommend using ads either. So it's all very organic and trying to be as honest as possible with our marketing.
Actually have a follow-up question to that. Because part of your community discussions at least are hosted on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
What would you do if LinkedIn all of a sudden crashes and it's gone?
Yeah, well, we've got a backup space for discussion, which is on a platform called Heartbeat, which is similar to Circle. It's like so if you've never seen it before, it's like a simple version of Slack, which you may have come across. So the interface is a bit easier to use, and it has its own app as well. But it's very much an emergency backup because, like I say, most people are comfortable with LinkedIn. But if for any reason the LinkedIn group were to go, or if LinkedIn itself were to vanish for a period of time for some disastrous reason, there would be somewhere else that I could direct people. And of course, I own the mailing list, so I can always get in touch with people if needs be. So I'm not relying on a social media platform for all my interactivity. I can still contact people in a disaster situation separately. So that's the main thing.
And that's a reminder to people to start building your email list, because LinkedIn is a social media platform that you don't own, but you can own your email list. I actually got banned yesterday. Can you believe it? For an hour.
Oh, wow.
I got completely suspended because two of my comments were flagged for being harassing or
Oh, wow.
bullying, even though I censored it and it was in a more sarcastic way towards a friend and another friend. And I don't know if someone took it out of context and flagged it, or LinkedIn's AI is really not understanding humor.
You've got to be very careful with those things, because I've seen examples of other people who are just having jokes with friends in comments and get banned.
Yeah.
And yeah, if enough people put in a complaint about you, anyone potentially could be banned. So just be careful with what you say out there, I guess.
That is sad reality. Yeah, LinkedIn has zero sense of humor. That is very true,
Yeah,
Matt.
it's true.
We're gonna try to fight the good fight in a censored way. Until then, I'm gonna have to be real soft on my messages. Anyways, we have a couple more questions. That can be a whole separate webinar, the censorship on LinkedIn. A question from Emma. Did you hit a plateau when growing your community?
Yeah, well, we had that instant growth on day one where all of the founder slots went. And getting into the middle of last year, we hit the maximum of about 250 members. And it's been kind of hovering between 230 and 250 since then. So I suppose we are already at our plateau after only a year of being in existence. But maybe it'll start growing again once the affiliate scheme comes out. But I am clear that the current model suits a small membership, and it's called Espresso, which is like a small shot of coffee. I'm not intending to try and make a massive organization, really. I like that it's small. And so, 300 is the limit as things stand.
A little maybe branding tip or idea for you if you were to scale your community might result in a lawsuit, but if it goes really big, you could call your community Espresso House. And the reason why a lawsuit is because we have a coffee chain in Finland. It's called Espresso House. They might come after you. Great. Well, we have two more questions. One from anonymous attendee. How will you incentivize people to post more about their wins on LinkedIn?
How would I incentivize them? Well, when you post about wins, that if you do it in the right way and you ask a question when doing so, instead of just saying, hey, I'm brilliant, but if it comes with a useful question or something that relates to some other people's struggles, that will generate conversations, and conversations is actually where I get all of my business from. So you write something interesting, you ask an interesting question, it leads to people commenting, that leads to more visibility, and some of those conversations become direct messages, and you form relationships with people, and eventually they hire you or they refer you to other people. That's the pathway. So posting about a win, I won an award, so what? No one cares. But if you wrap it in a story about the struggle to get there, or you ask a question, or you relate it to some kind of learning point, something that starts a conversation is what's most important.
So try to make it as conversational as possible. And
that's what it is. LinkedIn is a conversation platform, and I often equate posting to like being the host of a dinner party. You're being the host, you're kind of setting some kind of rules and expectations in the way that you write your stuff, but then you're inviting people to start the chat in the comments, and you can't fully control that chat, just as the way a dinner host couldn't really fully control it, but you can kind of set an agenda and then see what interesting thing comes about. So the more conversations you can have, the more business you will do eventually.
Will that apply the same way to the centralized community to encourage people to share wins?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you do it within a community, that means it's kind of private from the outside world, but sharing wins in that context can be really useful, because if everyone has a like-minded approach to business, like, for example, we're not going to do ads, we're going to do things ethically, we're going to do things organically, and people share, I've just started a podcast and I've just got myself 100 listeners, it's a win. That can really encourage other people who are like them to follow suit and do something positive themselves. Like we've got something at the moment where in my community, I'm trying to encourage people to create a profile video on their LinkedIn profile through the mobile app, 30 seconds, record it. If people see other people like them doing that, it's much easier for them to go and do the positive thing as well, instead of me with 40,000 plus followers saying you must go and create a profile video. So wins in that safe environment are much more valuable, I think, because they can encourage positive behavior in others who are like them.
So if one was to try and encourage such behavior within the community, the best bet will be to find a few members that could lead by example.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's much better for someone who is not so advanced to be doing things positively so that other people can be inspired by that. Yeah. So imagine if you were like in a community of people trying to, I don't know, lose weight, and you've got this super fit instructor and he's talking about, dumbbells and workouts in the gym. But if people in the community who were, let's say all of them were overweight, and then a few of them were saying, I did this and I lost 5 pounds and I feel great. Well, that's much more powerful for the community to go, oh, well, he can do it, she can do it, and maybe I can do it too. So those wins there become a lot more powerful. When you do it in public, it's a bit more detached and it can feel like boasting, you know?
Yeah.
But in the safety of a community, I think it can be really empowering.
Though there is definitely less judgment there, and that makes more encouraging. We have another question from Krati. How do you provide value to each member? Like they might be from different domains.
Well, it comes down to what kind of questions they're asking. I mean, the whole point of the community really is to help people with things like online visibility, personal branding, creating content. So the content that you create will be different if you're, you know, a technical architect versus someone who provides, you know, spiritual healing. I don't know. But the way that you need to think about how you go about it is probably going to be the same. Like, what do you stand for, and who is your ideal client, and what do you want to be known for, and what kind of feelings do you want to give people in your content, and what kind of questions could you be answering that people ask you in your business. Those abstractions can be talked about in more general terms. And then people often come in the community with lots of different questions about LinkedIn. So some people they really care about LinkedIn company pages. Other people really want to know how search works. Other people really want to know how best practices for your profile. And it's just a case of asking people what they want and then answering those questions. So it doesn't really matter what people do or what business they're in. The approaches are kind of similar for pretty much everyone, I think.
So, well, I guess to make it also similar to everyone, you need to make sure that you have your values and your goals of the community figured out. So you have a certain type of people joining and not just anyone and everyone.
And one other thing I would add to that is to try and make your content, wherever you create your content, try to make it as accessible as possible. So I provide videos, but I also provide the audio in a podcast, and I provide captions on the video so you can read it with the sound off, and I provide transcripts so you can read the whole thing without ever watching the video. So whatever suits you. If you're a reader, you can read. If you're a watcher, you can watch. If you're a listener, you can listen. So providing all forms of each piece of content it's a lot of effort, but it just means that everyone has their needs catered for as much as possible. So that I think that's an important thing as well. The more accessible your content is, the better it is for everyone, really.
Yeah, because I don't think you can filter members or filter people that join your community based on how they perceive information, because everyone is very unique and different. I mean, I perceive things very well visually, but also audio. So how do you cater to that, right?
I mean, you could do that. Like if I said up front on my joining page, everything is video based and I'm not doing captions because you need to listen to it. I could do that if I wanted to, but I probably wouldn't have as many members because some people hate videos and some people love videos. That's great. And I'd get them, but some people hate it. So I don't want to rule those people out.
So if you don't, then make it as accessible as possible.
Yes, I think so.
All right. Well, we have 4 more minutes till the webinar. Please keep the questions coming. If you need to run already, wanted to thank you, but there are also links at the bottom. My LinkedIn profile, John's LinkedIn profile, and Espresso Plus community link, if you're interested in checking that out. Any more questions, please send them in. We will also be able to answer those questions in the email we're recording tomorrow. So really, if you have any last minute, send them over. That will get answered. Thank you, Emma. Thank you.
One other thing I'm asked sometimes is whether we have any kind of free trial or anything like that. And I've decided consciously not to do that. Maybe that was a mistake. I don't know.
I've never heard of it.
I think there's a lot of value within the community. And right now, you can join for just a month if you want to. So I'm thinking about moving to quarterly, as I said, because of all of those credit card issues. But right now you could join for a month and try it out and see what we're all about and make a decision from that. Anyone, I'm trying to encourage people to join yearly. So if you do join yearly, you'll get 2 months for free. So you only pay for 10 months instead of 12. But feel free to try us out for a month if you'd like to find out more about how it really works behind the scenes.
And I bet you maybe can share as well link to your free side of community, or did you close that?
I've still got my free mailing list, but I don't tend to message it too much because I'm still creating free content for LinkedIn and most of that. You know, I'd rather just people discover that. And I make about, I did an analysis of this recently, that I make about 1/3 of all of my content is completely free through my website and through LinkedIn. About 2/3 of it is just for the community, just for the paid community. So I'm really focusing a lot of effort there for those 230 people, but I'm still creating a lot of free content. And if you follow me on LinkedIn or look at my website, you'll find loads of free stuff that will help you.
That is a massive split in terms of just how much you clearly dedicate to your community, because right now I think 100% of my content is free.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
But you've got to give people a reason to stay. So you've got to give them something they couldn't already get for free, I think.
I'm a fairly young and fresh community builder, so my days are yet to come for centralization. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Emma. We're going to start wrapping this up. If you have any questions, people in the chat, people in the audience, send them my way, send them towards John. Any questions about his community or how he manages his. I hope you enjoyed this session and learned a thing or 10. And we have one last webinar next Thursday. Just because you're attending this one, I'm going to spoil it for you. It's not a secret anymore, but I will announce it later today or tomorrow. The last webinar next week is going to be with Ola from All Things Money. She is running a personal finance community. And the topic is going to be how to, what was the topic? How to bring value to your community, or how to serve your community. Something around those edges. I'm still polishing it, but it's going to be all about value and how to serve your community in the right way. Her community is blossoming. It's a hybrid one as well, finance and marketing. I'm going to be sharing that in a recording email as well. Thank you so much for today. Thank you, John, for joining. And yeah, hope everyone has a nice rest of the day.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, Roman.